Wife of almost 3 decades had an affair when my son was a teenager, lied to him about it, blamed me for our estrangement, and I only discovered the truth through my daughter. I'm a guy in my late 50s, and I've been married to my wife, Isabel, for a long time. We're talking close to 3 decades. I've always thought we had a pretty good life, but some recent events have made me question everything. I came to this country as an immigrant. My biggest goal was to make enough money to take care of my parents. They sacrificed a lot for me, and I wanted to give them everything they ever wanted. Sadly, they are no longer in this world. I worked hard, even back in college. I was a bit of a nerd, always focused on my studies and my future. I wasn't really into the party scene. I eventually started my own company, and it's been successful. I started it before Isabel and I got married, and it's been growing steadily for the past 25 years. We have 2 kids, Jason, our oldest, and Rachel, our daughter. Jason was always my little buddy when he was growing up. We were really close. Rachel came along about 8.5 years after Jason. It was a surprise, but a good one. I remember holding Rachel for the first time, and I just felt this overwhelming need to protect her. I'd do anything for her. Right after Jason was born, Isabel had some health problems. She was in and out of the hospital quite a bit. Because of that, I took on most of the childcare. I wanted her to rest and recover. My company was flexible enough that I could work from home a lot of the time, so I became pretty much a full-time parent. I was there for all the big moments, Jason's first steps, teaching him to ride a bike, and patching him up after he fell, teaching him to play basketball. I can see that Isabel started to resent my closeness with Jason. She'd say things like I was hogging him, or that he was too attached to me. It always felt unfair, because I was just trying to be a good dad and help her out. She never really spent any one-on-one time with him. I even tried to encourage her to take him out for ice cream or just go for a drive, but she always seemed unsure of herself. She'd say she didn't know how to connect with him, and she'd always ask me to come along. Jason never said anything to me about him and his mom not being close. Kids don't always talk about that kind of thing, I guess. Then, Rachel came along. Like I said, it was unexpected, but we were happy. Isabel had mentioned before that she'd love to have a mini version of herself. Rachel ended up with Isabel's blue eyes and my blonde hair. Having a second child was a lot easier, in some ways. We'd learned from our mistakes with Jason, and there was less stress overall. I felt different about having a daughter. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but I felt even more protective of Rachel. More careful, I guess. I was a little worried about the age gap between Jason and Rachel, being 8.5 years apart, but I shouldn't have been. Jason was a fantastic older brother. He was always looking out for her, watching her sleep, playing with her. They were really close, which was great to see. It was clear, even early on, that Jason had a soft spot for his little sister, and she adored him. They'd do everything together, from building forts in the living room to playing video games. It warmed my heart to see them getting along so well, despite the age difference. I honestly couldn't have asked for a better relationship between my 2 kids. So, how did Isabel and I even get together? It's kind of a messy story, to be honest. The very first time I saw her, it was at a college party. She was, well, completely drunk. I thought she was beautiful, but definitely not someone I'd ever have a chance with. I figured she was way out of my league. We met again at another party, and this time, she came up to me. She asked me to dance. We didn't really dance, more like just shuffled around and laughed a lot. It was fun, but I still wasn't sure about her. Isabel was everything I wasn't. She was smart, really confident, and a total extrovert. She had no problem speaking her mind, even in front of a crowd. She was always giving me these hints, these signals, that she wanted me to ask her out. But I didn't. I wasn't the type to date just for fun. I had my goals, and I thought dating her would just be a distraction. I thought it was a waste of time. Then, after we'd met maybe 4 or 5 times at different parties, she cornered me. She straight up asked me why I hadn't asked her out. I was honest with her. I told her I thought it would be a waste of time because she was always partying, and I was focused on my studies and my future. She told me I needed to relax and have some fun, that I was spending too much time studying. She actually made some good points, I have to admit. But here's where things started to get complicated. Isabel had a drinking problem. It became pretty clear, pretty fast. It was like she had 2 personalities. A few drinks, she was sweet and fun. But if she had too much, she turned into a completely different person. I called her Miss Jacqueline Hyde in my head. There was this one really bad night at a bar. We were all celebrating. This bar had a cheap drink special early in the evening. Isabel got really drunk. She bumped into a server, and drinks spilled all over her dress. She just exploded. She started screaming at the server, pulling her hair, and using some really awful language. The server was terrified and kept apologizing, but Isabel wouldn't let it go. The manager came over and asked us to leave. Isabel's friends, instead of calming her down, started egging her on. One of them even smashed a glass. I paid for my drinks and Isabel's, separately. Isabel was still yelling, demanding that the server pay to have her dress cleaned. It was a mess. The police ended up getting called, and the whole group of them got arrested. Their parents had to bail them out. It was incredibly embarrassing, and I was furious. I couldn't believe how she'd acted. It was a complete overreaction to a simple accident. After that whole bar incident, I decided I was done with Isabel's party friends. They started texting me, calling me disloyal and saying I wasn't a good friend to Isabel. They basically uninvited me from any future parties. Honestly, I was fine with that. I didn't want to be around people who acted like that. Isabel, though, wanted to apologize to them. She thought we should all stick together and support each other. I flat out refused. I told her that if my parents ever had to bail me out of jail, they'd be furious. I come from a very different background, where that kind of behavior is just not acceptable. Isabel didn't really get it. She came from a different upbringing, and she thought I was being too strict. She just couldn't understand my perspective. It was a big difference between us. After that, I stopped going to parties with her and her friends. Fast forward to after graduation. Her friend group started to fall apart, which was hard for her to accept. I got a job in a different city. Isabel insisted on moving in with me. She said she'd be the perfect roommate, that it would help her focus on finding a job and getting serious about life. Well, that didn't exactly happen. For the first 6 months, I paid for everything: rent, bills, groceries, you name it. She wasn't contributing at all. I even asked her to just cook dinner, since I was working all day, but she struggled even with that. Most of the time, she'd just sit on the sofa and watch old dramas on the TV. I tried to encourage her to get out of the house, go to the park, maybe join a gym. She said she was feeling depressed. I felt bad, but I also knew she needed to do something. I finally had a serious talk with her about how much money I was spending. I told her I couldn't keep supporting both of us. It was putting a huge strain on me. She eventually got a job. But then, she started spending money like crazy. It seemed like every time she was bored, she'd be online, buying perfumes and makeup. I lost count of how many boxes were delivered to our door, all for her. It was one thing after another. It felt like as soon as she started making money, she found ways to spend it just as quickly. It was frustrating because we weren't saving anything. While Isabel was spending, I was saving. I was always careful with my money. I managed to save up enough to buy a car, a decent one. It was a big purchase for me. When Isabel saw the car, she demanded to see my bank account. She couldn't believe how much I had saved. It was like a switch flipped in her head. Suddenly, she started talking about investing her money and being more responsible. She actually stopped buying so much useless stuff. She finally learned how to save. It was a relief, to be honest. Because I saw this positive change in her, I decided to propose. We got engaged. But before we got married, I had another goal. I wanted to start my own business. I had been planning it for a while. I quit my job, which was a stable, well-paying job, to take the leap. I had saved enough money that I didn't need to rely on Isabel financially, which was important to me. Those early days of starting the business were tough. Isabel was supportive, emotionally at least. She'd listen when I was stressed or frustrated. Starting a business was really emotionally draining for me. I'm a perfectionist, which made things even harder. I had a really hard time letting go of control and delegating tasks to other people. I wanted everything to be perfect, and it was hard to trust others to do things the way I wanted them done. Once I felt like the company was stable, we got married. And after we got married, the business kept growing. It did really well over the next 25 years. I was finally able to provide for my parents, the way I always wanted. Isabel became a stay-at-home mom after we had Jason. It seemed like the best option at the time, given my work and her health issues after the birth. It was a decision we made together, but it also meant she was more dependent on me, financially. Things started to change when Jason became a teenager. It was the usual stuff: mood swings, wanting to spend more time with his friends, locking himself in his room listening to music. He just stopped hanging out with me like he used to. It was a normal part of growing up, but it still hurt. I felt this gap growing between us. I tried to be supportive, though. I'd remind him that I was always there for him if he needed anything. Rachel, on the other hand, stayed really close to me. She was always so excited to see me when I got home from work. She'd run to the door to greet me. I used to bring her little gifts sometimes, a teddy bear or some flowers, hiding them behind my back to surprise her. Seeing her face light up was the best part of my day. I sometimes wondered if Jason was a little jealous of the attention I gave Rachel. It was never my intention to make him feel excluded, but I could see how it might look that way. Kids don't always understand those things. I tried to make sure I was still there for Jason, even if he was pushing me away a bit. The bigger problem, though, was Isabel. She very clearly favored Rachel. She was always pointing out how much Rachel looked like her, how they had the same personality. It felt like she was ignoring Jason, or at least, not giving him the same kind of attention. I tried to talk to her about it, urging her to spend some time with Jason. She'd just brush it off, saying he needed his space and that I was overthinking things. They barely talked to each other, Isabel and Jason. Just small talk, nothing meaningful. She just didn't seem interested in building a real relationship with him. And whenever I tried to get them to talk, to bridge that gap, Isabel would get defensive. She'd accuse me of taking Jason's side, of undermining her authority. It was frustrating because I was just trying to help them connect. I wanted them to have a good relationship, but she made it so difficult. It felt like she was actively pushing him away, and I couldn't understand why. Things got worse with Jason. He started talking back to Isabel, which wasn't like him. He started sneaking out at night to drink with his friends. Then, there was the DUI incident. He took my car keys without permission and got caught by the police. Luckily, it was his first offense, and they just gave him a warning. I was furious. I gave him a serious lecture about how dangerous it was, how he could have hurt himself or someone else. But Isabel for some reason defended him. She said things like, young people needed to have fun sometimes, and that it was just like when she was young. This caused the first really big fight in our family. I couldn't believe she was being so lenient about something so serious. She accused me of being too strict and out of touch with teenagers, which just made me angrier. It felt like she was completely undermining me and condoning his dangerous behavior. After that, Jason just shut down. He told me he wanted to be left alone. He refused to go to therapy, saying he didn't need anyone's help. He became defiant, talking back to both of us, but especially to Isabel. The school started sending home complaints about his incomplete assignments and his behavior in class. He was like a completely different person. I tried to talk to him, to find out what was going on, but he wouldn't open up. He'd either stay silent or say something dismissive to get me to leave him alone. It was incredibly frustrating. Around this time, I started traveling more for work. My company was expanding, and I needed to be on the road a lot. Looking back, I know I wasn't around as much as I should have been. Maybe I should have made more of an effort to talk to Jason, even though he was pushing me away. I wish I could have done something, held on to him somehow, and taken away whatever was bothering him. I felt helpless, watching him spiral and not knowing how to stop it. Then came the night that changed everything. I had just gotten back from a work trip. I walked into the house, and I could hear Isabel and Jason screaming at each other. It was loud, and it sounded really bad. I rushed into the living room, and it was a complete mess. There were broken glasses and plates all over the floor. Jason was standing there, facing Isabel, yelling at her. He was saying he hated her. I'd never heard him talk like that before. I stepped between them, trying to protect Isabel, even though I didn't know what was going on. That's when Jason turned on me. He called me a coward, a deadbeat father. Those words, they really shook me. I didn't understand where it was coming from. He said our marriage was a sham, that we'd been lying to him his entire life. He said he was sick of pretending we were a perfect family, that he was disgusted by us. He said he didn't want to live with us anymore. Isabel intervened, but not in a helpful way. She sternly told Jason that he was too young to make those kinds of accusations about our marriage. She was basically telling him his feelings weren't valid because of his age. She wasn't trying to understand why he was so upset. I tried to calm things down. I told Jason that name-calling wasn't going to solve anything. I asked him to apologize, but he refused. He scoffed at me and said he meant every word he said. He blamed me for everything. He even said I didn't deserve to have children. Hearing my own son say those things to me felt awful. I was completely blindsided. I had no idea what had caused this level of anger and resentment. And then, I did something I never thought I'd do. In a moment of pure anger, I slapped Jason. I've never hit anyone in my life. The second I did it, I regretted it. Guilt and shame just washed over me. I stepped back, and I couldn't even believe I'd done that. My hand was actually trembling. Everyone was in shock. Jason just clutched his cheek and staggered back. Tears were welling up in his eyes. He didn't say anything. He just ran upstairs. He called Isabel's parents, his grandparents. They came over pretty quickly. They knew something serious had happened, and they reprimanded me for hitting Jason. But they also seemed to understand that the situation was complicated. Jason wouldn't even look at me. I tried to apologize, but he ignored me. He left with his grandparents. He didn't even say goodbye to Rachel, who was at a friend's birthday party at the time. After he left, Isabel just gave me this half-hearted hug and said I should apologize to him later. Like she wasn't really grasping how serious this was. I tried to reach out to Jason every day. I went to his grandparents' house, but he locked himself in his room and wouldn't see me. I sent him countless texts, telling him to talk to me. He cut off all contact, except for accepting money from me for his education. That was the only communication we had. Isabel told me the argument had been about Jason's homework and his defiant behavior. She made it sound like a typical teenage argument that had just gotten out of hand. At first, I believed her, given how Jason had been acting lately. But later, I started to have doubts. Jason's reaction had been so extreme, it didn't make sense for it to just be about homework. When I expressed my doubts to Isabel, she got angry. She accused me of always doubting her and never trusting her judgment. It was another fight, and it just made things even worse. I felt completely lost. Jason ended up getting a full scholarship to college. It was a good school, and I was proud of him, even though we weren't speaking. I sent him a text, congratulating him and apologizing again for everything. His response was short and brutal. He asked me to stop sending him messages. He said I was no longer his father. It was like he was echoing what he'd said that night, about me being a deadbeat father. It broke my heart all over again. The next few years were hard. I missed Jason all the time. I thought about him constantly, wondering how he was doing, what he was up to. Rachel was the only one who still had contact with him. She'd give me occasional updates, but it wasn't the same as talking to him myself. She knew about what happened that night, the fight and the slap. She understood how much I regretted it. I think she was the only one who really did. We just didn't talk about Jason as a family. Isabel never mentioned him, and I didn't bring him up because it always led to an argument or just a heavy silence. Then, just recently, on Rachel's birthday, everything changed. She spent the whole day with Jason at an adventure park. I was happy they were spending time together, but I was also a little anxious. I stayed up late, waiting for her to get home. I wanted to make sure she got back safe, and, honestly, I was hoping to maybe see Jason, even if just for a moment. Isabel was already asleep. This wasn't unusual. She often went to bed early, leaving me to handle things. When Rachel got home, she looked disturbed. I asked her how her day was, and she just shook her head. Then she asked me something that completely threw me. "Dad, do you know the real reason Jason left?" She said Jason missed me, which surprised me, given his last text. But then she said he'd told her something that she found hard to believe. She suggested I check my old emails, that Jason had emailed me years ago. At first, I thought she must have misunderstood. I checked my Gmail account, the one I use all the time, and there was nothing. Then I remembered this really old email address I used to use, mostly for Facebook. I hadn't used it in years. I barely remembered the password, but I managed to recover the account. And there they were. Dozens of unread emails from Jason, sent over the years, every time he was having a difficult day. I started reading them, and it was like reading a horror story. They were filled with his pain, his struggles, his feelings of betrayal. The main thing, the thing that made my blood run cold, was this: Jason had come home from school one day and found Isabel in bed with someone else. He was furious, understandably, and he yelled at her. Isabel threatened him. She told him that if he told me, it would lead to our divorce. She claimed we had an open marriage, and that I was also having affairs during my work trips. All complete lies. She made him feel like it was his fault, like he was the one who was wrong. He was disgusted, and confused, and completely heartbroken. He'd been going to therapy, and through that and talking to Rachel, he'd realized that Isabel had lied to him. But he felt so guilty. He'd walked out on me, mistreated me, and he didn't know how to face me after all that. He regretted not opening up sooner. Reading those emails, it was like a punch after punch after punch. I felt shock, sadness, betrayal, and then just pure rage. My whole life, my whole marriage, felt like it had fallen apart. I realized how much Isabel had deceived me, how much time I'd lost with Jason because of her lies. I don't know what to do, Reddit. My life is horrible and I feel stupid for not checking my emails sooner. Everything could have been avoided if Jason spoke to me directly. There were no reasons for the stupid mails. So what should I do, Reddit? Update: So Reddit, it's been a while and I wanted to update you guys sooner but didn't have much time. Anyways, here is the update. I couldn't just sit there with this information. I had to confront Isabel. I woke her up and asked her, point blank, why would you lie to our son about something so serious? At first, she denied everything. She claimed Jason was making things up, that he'd always had a problem with authority. She was trying to make me doubt him, to gaslight me into believing her version of events. But I had proof. I had printed out Jason's emails. I showed them to her. Faced with the evidence, she couldn't keep up the denial. But instead of apologizing, she started minimizing it. She said it was a one-time mistake, that it was meaningless. I was furious. I pointed out the years of estrangement from Jason, the emotional damage she'd caused. I said, you let me believe our son hated me for something I did in a moment of anger, when all along, it was your lies that drove him away. She finally broke down in tears. She confessed to the affair. She said it happened when Jason was a teenager, and she recounted the same details that Jason had written in his emails. She said she lied because she was afraid of losing me, that she used the lie to shut Jason up. It was all about her. She wouldn't tell me who the affair was with, but honestly, I didn't even care at that point. The damage was done. It didn't matter who it was. Then, she said something that just... I don't even have words for it. She confessed that she had never liked Jason. She said she'd always wanted daughters, and that was another reason she couldn't bond with him. I just stared at her. How could you say that about your own child? How could you deliberately favor one child over another? I asked her those questions, but she didn't have an answer. She just sat there, crying. There was no remorse, no understanding of the pain she'd caused. Looking at her, I felt nothing but anger. I told her, I can't even look at your face without seeing red. I said I hate my wife so much. After that confrontation, there was no going back. I knew immediately that I wanted a divorce. There were no doubts in my mind. I told Isabel to move out, immediately. She pleaded with me to reconsider, but it was no use. She'd broken my trust completely, and there was no repairing the damage. Rachel had seen the fight and the aftermath, and she'd put the pieces together. She was furious with Isabel. She refuses to speak to her. I contacted Jason. I needed to talk to him, to clarify things further. He was guarded at first, understandably. But I just broke down. I told him how much I missed him, how sorry I was for everything. He started to get emotional, too. He admitted he regretted leaving home that night. He wished he could turn back time and apologize to me instead of running away. I feel terribly sorry for my son. He went through so much, and it was all because of Isabel's lies and manipulation. She manipulated the entire situation just to hide her affair. And for years, she blamed me, and the slap, for the problems with Jason. It was a pattern with her, always shifting the blame, never taking responsibility. I realized she never actually missed Jason, never reached out to him. She used the situation to make me feel guilty. I wish I had known the truth sooner. Both of my children, Jason and Rachel, are on the same page. They both agree that I should divorce Isabel. They don't want anything to do with her. And honestly, neither do I. I'm starting the divorce process, and it's going to be messy, but I'm ready to move on with my life. I'm finally starting to rebuild my relationship with Jason, and that's the most important thing to me.